This happened 2 years ago, during the worst storm I can remember. I was staying at my uncle's cabin in northern Pennsylvania, a small A-frame nestled deep in the Allegheny woods. He used it as a summer getaway, but during fall it sat empty. I'd taken a week off work to get away, clear my head. No cell reception, no internet, just books, a wood stove, and quiet. It sounded perfect until the third night, when the rain started and didn't stop. By midnight, the wind was shaking the trees so hard I could hear branches snapping out in the dark. Rain pelted the roof like gravel. I sat on the couch with a blanket, flipping through an old field guide I'd found in the closet. The power had gone out an hour earlier, so I lit a few candles. Everything was still until I heard what I thought was someone knocking. I paused, holding my breath. It wasn't the door. It came from the side of the cabin, 3 sharp tap. Then silence. I stood up slowly and walked to the nearest window. The rain blurred everything, sheets of water sliding down the glass. I couldn't see anything past the porch. I waited there, just listening. Then again, knock, knock, knock. Same rhythm, same spot. This time, I grabbed a flashlight. The side of the cabin didn't have a door, just an old woodpile and a narrow footpath that led down to the creek. I swung the door open and stepped out under the covered porch, aiming the light around the corner. Nothing, just the trees thrashing and the rain bouncing off the gravel. I waited a few seconds, heart pounding, then stepped back inside and locked. The door, I tried to brush it off. Maybe something hit the siding, or maybe I was hearing things, but a part of me knew better. I sat back down on the couch and tried to distract myself with a book. Another 15 minutes passed. Then it happened again, louder this time, same place. This time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my boots, threw on a rain jacket, and stepped. Outside with the flashlight, I walked round the cabin to the spot where I'd heard it. Nothing unusual. But when I pointed the light down toward the ground, my breath caught. There were footprints in the mud, not boot prints, bare feet, leading from the edge of the woods to the cabin wall and stopping there. No prints going back, no trail into the trees, just a single path of wet, human footprints ending beneath the window. I backed away fast, slipped on the wet gravel, and scrambled inside. I locked the door behind me and dragged a chair in front of it. Every instinct told me to leave, but the nearest town was 40 minutes away through winding roads and fog. I stayed up the rest of the night with the flashlight on my lap. The knocking never came again, not that night. But around 4 a.m., just before the first light broke through the trees, I heard something far more unsettling. From the woods behind the cabin, faint and distant, someone was whistling. 3 slow notes, rising and falling, over and over, like a tune you almost recognize but can't quite place. It faded after about 30 seconds, but I didn't move until sunrise. I packed my bags that morning and left. I never told my uncle what happened, but a few months later, when he went back up for the spring, he called me. He found footprints in the dirt outside the window, bare, human, and they led all the way round the cabin. Just one set. This happened to my friend Ellie last October. She'd just started a new job as a traveling nurse in eastern Kentucky and was working rotating shifts, covering rural clinics scattered across 3 counties. Most nights, she drove alone through long stretches of wooded roads with no service, no towns, just thick trees and winding pavement. She liked the quiet, said it helped her think. But that night, it had been raining non-stop since she left the clinic at around 11 p.m, and the silence felt different, heavier, like something was waiting in it, She was about halfway home, somewhere on Route 203, when she saw it. A flicker of light just up ahead on the shoulder. At first, she thought it was a hazard light, maybe someone broken down. As she got closer, she realized it wasn't flashing. It was steady, a single old-fashioned lantern, like something you'd see in a horror movie, glowing faintly yellow in the rain, and next to it, a man. He stood just beyond the edge of the road, facing the trees, not moving, not reacting to the headlights, just standing in the downpour, holding the lantern out in front of him like he was guiding someone. Ellie slowed down, but didn't stop. Something about him felt wrong. His clothes didn't look soaked, even though the rain had been pouring for hours, and his posture too still, too stiff. She passed by, heart thudding, trying not to look at him directly. But as she checked the rearview mirror, she gasped. He was facing her now. She hit the gas. Her hands were shaking. The next few miles were a blur of rain and nerves. She told herself it was nothing, just a guy out walking. Maybe a hiker, maybe a farmer. But deep down, she didn't believe it. That stretch of road ran through state land. No houses for miles, no trails, and nobody walked around with a lantern in a thunderstorm. Then, 10 minutes later, she saw the light again, same side of the road. Same color, same man. But this time, he was much closer to the pavement, like he'd moved in, waiting for her. She didn't slow down, didn't blink, just gripped the wheel and sped past. She didn't look back this time, didn't want to see if he was watching. When she finally reached her rental, a small duplex on the edge of town, she pulled straight into the driveway, killed the engine, and ran inside without even grabbing her bag. She stayed up all night, curtains drawn, lights off. She couldn't explain it, but the image of that man wouldn't leave her head. His face. It wasn't blank. It wasn't angry. It was expectant. Like he was waiting for something, calling someone. 2 days later, she finally told her supervisor, and got reassigned to a different route. She never saw the man again. But about a month after it happened, her neighbor, a retired game warden, mentioned something strange. He said the road out by Route 203 used to be part of an old logging camp, over 100 years ago. Said loggers used lanterns like that to guide each other through storms and darkness. And sometimes, when someone went missing out there, the others would line the road at night holding lanterns. Not to search, but to lead the dead back home. This happened when I was 15. I went to a small Christian summer camp called Camp Coldwater in West Virginia. It was one of those week-long sleepaway camps with cabins, campfires, and no phones allowed. Normally, we'd go in July, but that year, due to scheduling issues, my group went in early September. Fewer kids, colder nights, and on the third day, it started raining and didn't stop for the rest of the week. The rain wasn't the scary part. What happened on the 5th night was, our cabin was one of the older ones, set farther back in the woods near the edge of the lake. It was small, just 6 bunk beds, a flickering overhead light, and a single window that faced the tree line. That night, we were all in our sleeping bags, listening to the rain hammering the roof. One of the other kids, Drew, was telling a dumb ghost story when suddenly he just stopped, went quiet. I looked over and saw him staring at the window. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. It looked like someone was standing out there, pressed up against the glass, but it didn't make sense. Our cabin was raised a few feet off the ground, and the window was high up for someone to be at eye level. They'd have to be at least 8 feet tall. No one said anything. We just lay there frozen, all of us watching. The face against the glass was pale, really pale, almost white. And the features were wrong. The nose too small, the mouth too wide, and the eyes completely black, like marbles. It didn't move, just stared. Rain running down the window between us. After what felt like forever, one of the counselors came to do a check-in. We heard his voice outside, and his flashlight beam came through the cracks in the wall. When he opened the door, we all screamed and pointed at the window, but by then it was gone. The counselor thought we were just worked up from telling scary stories and too much sugar. He checked around the cabin but didn't find anything. Still, none of us slept that night. We just lay there, staring at the window, waiting for it to come back. In the morning, when we finally dared to go outside, we found footprints in the mud. Huge ones, but not boots, not shoes. Barefoot, and the weirdest part, they didn't start near the path or the woods. They started right beneath the window. No prints leading to them, no trail away. Just a single set, standing still, then nothing. This happened about 5 years ago, back when I was in college. I had just moved into a basement apartment off campus, the kind that's half below street level, always a little damp, with a narrow window that barely let in light. The rent was cheap, and I liked the solitude. No roommates, no noise, just me, my books, and the occasional creaking from upstairs. That weekend, it had been raining non-stop, the kind of slow, heavy rain that makes the world feel small. I actually liked it. I made tea, played music, caught up on reading. Around midnight, I realized I hadn't taken out the trash. Normally, it wouldn't have bothered me, but my building didn't have bins outside. The dumpster was under a nearby overpass, about 50 yards away, down a sloped footpath with no lights. Just the concrete bridge, the muddy path, and the dark space underneath. I hesitated, but figured I'd just get it over with. I pulled on my hoodie, grabbed the bag, and stepped out into the wet night. The streets were empty. Just the sound of rain splashing off rooftops and running into the drains. As I walked toward the overpass, I felt more exposed than I expected. The city fell off like it was watching, and that's when I saw him. At first I thought it was a shadow cast by a car passing above, but as I got closer, I saw the shape more clearly. A man standing underneath the bridge, not leaning, not smoking, not doing anything, just standing there still and silent, half hidden by the darkness. I stopped in my tracks. He hadn't noticed me, or at least, he hadn't moved. I should have turned around, but I didn't. I told myself I was being paranoid. It's a public sidewalk. People can stand wherever they want. I forced myself forward, head down, not making eye contact. I tossed the trash into the dumpster and turned to head back. Heard it. You see them too, don't you? The voice didn't echo. It was right behind me, close enough to feel warm breath. I spun around, but he was still standing exactly where he'd been, too far for the voice to make sense. He hadn't moved, hadn't opened his mouth. His arms were at his sides, his face in shadow. I walked fast, not quite running, but close. Every step felt heavier than the last. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door and turned on every light. My heart was pounding. I didn't sleep that night, but when morning came, I convinced myself it had just been a weird encounter. Maybe he was high. Maybe I imagined the voice, but the next day, something was written on my fogged-up window. They see you too. No footprints, no smudges, just letters drawn into the mist from the inside. I hadn't touched the window. I hadn't opened it. I sat there, staring at it for a long time. It happened again, 2 nights later. This time I watched as the words slowly appeared, one letter at a time. No hand, no movement, just writing forming on the glass. I called the landlord. He changed the locks. I even asked if someone had a key to the basement unit. He said no. It was a separate entry. No one else had access. But the writing kept happening. Always when it rained. Always the same message. They see you too. Eventually, I moved. Switched cities. Thought it was behind me. But sometimes, when it rains hard enough, I still see things in the corner of the glass. Not reflections, not shadows, just shapes. Faces looking in from the outside. This happened to my older brother Jacob in 2016. He was working with a historical restoration crew in Georgia, a small team that specialized in surveying and stabilizing old buildings, places forgotten by time. That fall, they were contracted to assess a derelict church deep in the Appalachian foothills. It wasn't listed on any current property maps, and the access road wasn't even paved, just a dirt trail choked by branches and bramble. According to what little information they had, the church dated back to the late 1800s. Single steeple, whitewashed wood exterior, long since abandoned. The place was hidden in a hollow surrounded by trees, and by the time they reached it, a storm had already begun creeping in from the north. Jacob's team made their assessment quickly. The roof sagged in places, the floorboards were warped, and the bell tower looked ready to collapse. By 4 p.m., most of the team decided to head back before the trail turned to mud. But Jacob stayed. He wanted to take photos for the report. He liked the atmosphere, said it felt haunting in a good way. He was wrong. While photographing the back of the church, the bell rang, not once, but 3 times. Slow, hollow, measured. He stopped in his tracks, looked up at the tower. The rope that once pulled the bell had long since rotted away. All that remained was a frayed length of hemp, hanging limply through the floor of the steeple. No one else was there. Jacob circled the building, calling out. He checked the woods, the path, even inside the church. Nothing. It was completely empty. But the air had changed. He described it later like pressure on your chest, like being underwater. Every sound, the rain, the wind, felt distant, muffled. He was about to leave when he noticed something strange at the back of the sanctuary, a wall that didn't match. It was newer, cleaner. The wood still had grain visible beneath the dust. It stood out wrong somehow, like it was hiding something. Jacob knocked on it hollow. He looked closer and realized the seams didn't go all the way to the floor, as if someone had boarded up a passage or a room. But there was no door. And then the bell rang again, louder just once. Jacob stepped outside, flashlight in hand. The storm was fallen now, rain hammering everything in sheets. He turned in a slow circle, light slicing through the dark. That's when he saw it. Up in the bell tower, a figure, standing behind the slats. No face, just blackness, watching. He ran to his truck and floored. It didn't stop until he reached the nearest motel. He barely slept. Around 2 a.m., he heard a sound from the hallway outside his room. Something soft, like a bell. The next morning, he went to meet the crew. He told them what happened. No one believed him, not fully. But when they returned to the church later that week, they found something behind the wall. A hidden room, no windows, no doors, just 4 walls. And in the center, a chair, bolted to the floor, long rusted chains, and scratch marks all along the inside of the wood. Deep ones, human. There were no records of what the room was used for. The local town had no documents. But one of the older workers, a guy named Russ, said he'd heard stories about the bell, about people hearing it late at night, deep in the woods, always in the rain. They tried removing it, tried to take it down, but every time they climbed the tower, the bell wasn't there. Just empty space, no chains, no metal, nothing. But when they walked away, it rang again. Jacob quit the job a month later, moved across the country. He doesn't talk about it anymore. But sometimes, during storms, I catch him staring out the window, not blinking, not moving, just listening. Even after hearing all these stories, there's something about rainy nights that still pulls us in the quiet, the isolation, the feeling that something just might be watching from the dark. If you've ever experienced something you can't explain, especially on a night like this, you're not alone. Subscribe for more true horror stories, and don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss what comes next in the storm. And remember, if you hear knocking in the rain, don't answer.